The Galactic Conclave's observation deck hummed with the quiet arrogance of 1,000 civilizations that had never known real fear. Viraya stood at the center of it all, 7 feet of iridescent scales, membrane wings folded against her back like a collapsed cathedral, her 4 eyes gleaming with the cold amusement of a predator who had never once doubted her place at the top of the food chain. She was Sylvari. Her people had conquered 12 star systems before humanity had figured out the wheel. The human across from her was named Kalen. He was, by any measurable galactic standard, completely unremarkable. Average height for his species, which meant the top of his head barely reached Viraya's collarbone. Soft skin with no natural armor. No venom glands. No echolocation. No thermal vision. 2 eyes, both fixed forward, both utterly limited. He wore the standard gray uniform of a Terran Deep Survey operative, and he was currently eating what appeared to be a compressed nutrition block with the focused enthusiasm of someone who hadn't slept in 30 hours. Which, as it happened, he hadn't. "You received the briefing on Sector 09? Viraya asked, her translation collar rendering her amusement in crisp, patronizing standard galactic. Kalen looked up from his nutrition block. "Yep. And you still submitted a solo expedition request?" "Yep." Viraya's secondary eyelids, the translucent ones she used for expressing emotions she considered too small to vocalize, slid halfway across her pupils. This was the Sylvari equivalent of a raised eyebrow combined with a barely suppressed laugh. "Kalen," she said, drawing his name out the way one might address a child who had just announced their intention to fight the ocean. "Sector 09 has a Class 12 biosphere rating. My people classify it as unsurvivable. The Kreth Empire lost an entire battalion in the outer atmosphere alone. The Delvari Collective sent 6 of their top xenobiologists and received back a single boot and a formal apology from the planet itself." Kalen finished his nutrition block, folded the wrapper with the careful precision of someone managing small tasks, while their brain ran much larger calculations in the background. "I know," he said. "You know." Viraya repeated the words slowly, tasting the absurdity of them. "You should flee, human. You should run back to your little blue world and be grateful that whatever gods you pray to saw fit to park you in a solar system boring enough that nothing hungry ever bothered to visit." She let a low, resonant sound build in her chest, the Sylvari laugh, deep and rhythmic as a war drum. "You have no venom, no armor, no regeneration. Your bones snap. Do you understand what lives in Null 9? The apex fauna there makes my people's nightmare fauna look like therapy animals." The observation deck had gone quiet. Other delegates, Kreth ambassadors, Delvari administrators, a cluster of the 6-limbed Mun trade representatives, had all turned to watch. Kalen looked at her. His eyes were a color Viraya had always found unsettling about humans. That flat, dark brown that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, that gave nothing back. Like looking into something that had already decided the outcome and was simply waiting for the universe to catch up. She laughed. Kalen said quietly, not to Viraya, but almost to himself, the way humans sometimes narrated their own experiences like they were already remembering them. Then he looked at her directly, and something in his expression shifted. Not to anger, not to fear, not to the desperate bravado of a creature trying to convince itself it wasn't afraid. To something worse. To certainty. "Viraya," he said, "my species came from a death world." She opened her mouth. He kept talking. "Not a Class 6. Not a Class 8. Earth, pre-industrial, pre-civilization, raw evolutionary baseline Earth, was a Class 9.7. We didn't have the luxury of venom because we had to save the metabolic cost for endurance. We can run. Not fast, but for days. We sweat. Do you know what sweating is? It's a cooling system so efficient that we can chase large prey animals across open terrain until they collapse from heat exhaustion and we just walk up to them. Our sleep cycle evolved with half our brain staying alert for predators. We don't regenerate, so our immune system is instead a war machine. We have survived plagues that should have unmade us, and every time, the ones who were left were the ones the disease couldn't kill. We don't have armor, so we built it. We don't have venom, so we synthesized thousands of variations. We don't have natural weapons, so we invented ones capable of cracking moons." The observation deck was absolutely silent now. Kalen's voice hadn't risen. That was the part that made Veraya's secondary eyelids snap fully shut. He was calm. Null 9 has a Class 12 biosphere, he continued. That means it's approximately 2.3 threat classifications above the environment that made us. Which means that for the first time in my career, I'm going to a place where I might actually have to pay attention. He picked up his survey pack from the floor beside his chair, slung it over one shoulder. The Kreth battalion you mentioned, he said, almost as an afterthought. How long did they train for cold weather survival? Veraya stared at him. It is not a cold weather failure. The atmospheric fauna alone. Right, but the atmospheric fauna on Null 9's northern continent are ectothermic. They go dormant below -40. Entry through polar approach, winter cycle timing, eliminates roughly 60% of the aerial threat matrix. He tilted his head slightly. I already mapped the approach corridor. That's why I asked for a 3-week entry window. I'm going in during their equivalent of February. A long, ringing silence. One of the Mun representatives made a sound like a leaking pressure valve. It was, Veraya would later learn, their species' expression of awe. You've already planned it, she said. The amusement was completely gone from her voice now, replaced by something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Something old and instinctive. Something that lived in the part of her brain that remembered, 10,000 generations back, what it felt like when a creature appeared that didn't fit the model. That behaved wrong. That looked at danger the way predators looked at prey. I've been planning it for 8 months, Kalen said. I filed the atmospheric entry calculations with Survey Command last Tuesday. I have fallback extraction points at 6 intervals. I have studied every field report ever submitted on Null 9, including the Delvari mission. Specifically, I analyzed what went wrong. He paused. They didn't account for the fungal network in the subsurface layer. It's a distributed neural system. The planet is, in a limited sense, aware. I'm bringing signal disruptors tuned to its communication frequency. Veraya's blood, copper-rich, ozone-scented, coursing through a cardiovascular system that had evolved for a high-gravity world, ran cold. Not metaphorically. The Sylvari had a genuine physiological response to existential threat. A shunting of blood from the extremities to the core organs, a last-resort survival reflex that had served them through ice ages and predator extinctions and the collapse of 3 separate star systems. She felt it now, not because she was afraid of Null 9, because she was suddenly, viscerally, deeply afraid of the creature standing in front of her. This soft, unarmored, sleep-deprived biped with the flat, light-absorbing eyes, calmly discussing how to jam a planetary neural network while eating a compressed nutrition block. You're going to do it, she said. Not a question, not a challenge, a recognition. I'm going to do it, Kalen agreed. And when I come back, I'm going to file a full survey report and recommend Null 9 for potential future colonization assessment. Give it about 200 years. He walked toward the exit, stopped, turned back, as if remembering something minor. For the record, he said, looking at Veraya with those terrible, certain eyes, you shouldn't have laughed. He left. The observation deck remained silent for a long time after. It was one of the Kreth ambassadors, a species not known for philosophical reflection, who finally spoke. How? The ambassador said slowly. Did something that fragile end up like that? No one answered. Somewhere below them, in the docking bay, a single Terran survey vessel was powering its engines, setting a course for Sector Null 9. And somewhere in the deep, quiet math of the universe, something that had never learned to be afraid was going to a place that had never learned it had reason to be. 3 weeks later, Kalen filed his survey report. Null 9's planetary neural network, the report noted, had attempted communication 12 times during the expedition. He had written back. It was, he recorded in the appendix, a fascinating conversation.